Awesome. So it looks like we are a few minutes past the hour, so I think this is a wonderful time to start. First and foremost, welcome everyone. My name is Andrea and I'm with the Juris Education. I will be one of your hosts this evening. Tonight's discussion is about building the perfect law school application and what that looks like. Before we get started, I do have a couple of housekeeping rules, so to speak. This webinar is recorded, so you will receive a recording in your inbox within the next couple of days. If you do need to pop out, don't worry, you will get that recording nonetheless. We're looking at running it for about 45 minutes, so half an hour of some really engaging conversations with the two individuals you see on screen. I'll let them introduce themselves momentarily, as well as a 15-minute or so question and answer period, where you really get to get those questions answered about the law school application process, or sort of any sort of lingering questions you may have. So what are we talking about today? What is this webinar actually about? So we'll be speaking about the key elements of a complete JD application, how to craft a compelling personal statement, the strategies for selecting the right law school for you, and how to tailor your application to meet the expectations and needs of all the law schools you're applying to. So before I go on, I just want to take a really quick moment to introduce ourselves. So who is Juris Education? Why are we the experts in our field? And what gives us the credibility to speak on such a matter? So Juris Education, we're a globally recognized law school admissions consulting firm offering comprehensive support from test prep to law school admissions and even bar exam tutoring. With a 94% acceptance rate, our students gain entry into the top law schools in the United States. Last cycle alone, our T4 acceptance rate was actually 34%, which is almost 6 times higher than the national average of 5.7%, something we're incredibly proud of. We believe in starting the law school application process as early as possible. For college sophomores, we offer pre-law advising and profile development. This focuses on building each student's professional cover letter and resume to highlight their most meaningful experience and elevate their profile. To help candidates stand out, we assist in enhancing transcripts and GPA, identifying organizations and internships, creating a timeline for LSAT and application prep, and pinpointing specific areas of interest. Our goal is to help students gain a strong foundation and understand what schools are looking for while building a profile and portfolio that sets them apart from other applicants. While our counselors support students in building their profiles, our LSAC coaches work closely with them to provide personalized one-on-one tutoring. Students take an official LSAT diagnostic test so tutors can assess their strengths and their weaknesses. This helps create a custom study plan structure for the days, weeks, and months ahead. We tailor our approach to each student's unique needs and schedule, providing the right assessments and lessons as they become familiar with the test content, strategies, and format. Intern tests monitor and track progress, allowing us to modify study plans and build an upward trend leading to the official test date. On average, we see a 12-point increase for 45 plus hours of tutoring and offer a 165 plus LSAT score guarantee. Once we've helped build an outstanding candidate, we can support in creating the perfect application. Law schools review applications holistically, and we assist with every step of the process. Our support starts with a detailed profile analysis, diving deep into the student's stats and lived experiences. This guides the creation of a well-balanced list of target, safety, and reach schools. We also help build strong resumes and obtain letters of recommendation from the right recommenders. Our services continue through the interview process and include waitlist strategy, support, and scholarship assistance until students receive their acceptances. Our admissions counselors, who are also essay writing experts, will brainstorm, outline, and edit your supplemental essays and personal statements until they are perfect. These essays showcase the best aspect of our students, connecting their life journeys with the themes of each school they apply to. Whether it's your main application or scholarship essays, we've got your back with unlimited edits. Overall, our goal is to build the perfect candidate and application. We use every tool in our skill set to ensure the products we create with our students stand out from the rest. We're excited to assist you with the process and look forward to our consultations. With that being said, I'd love to pass it over to the two wonderful individuals on screen to introduce themselves. Justin, do you want to go first? You just happen to be on the left.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse. I graduated from USC Gould School of Law in 2022 with my JD MBA. And I have been coaching admissions essays ranging from undergrad to law school to business school applications for about 8 years now. I was a writing center consultant for 4 years at Emory University, and when I went to USC, I remained a writing center consultant there for another 4 years. So in total, I've been uh, helping a lot of people from all different types of backgrounds with their admissions processes. And specifically with law school, I pull from my own personal experience because of the trials and tribulations that I personally went through. And so I understand how stressful the process can be, and I want to make it as seamless as possible. So I'm really happy to be here to discuss with you guys how to help perfect your application.
And hi, everyone. I'm Joshua. I am a graduate of Harvard Law School, also class of 2022. And I have been assisting people with application and consulting for only about 5 years. So haven't caught up to Jesse yet, but have also worked in various capacities with helping people edit papers. I worked as actually an editor at a publisher before law school for some amount of time, and have also assisted people and gained a lot of joy from helping people put together their applications, tell their stories as well. And I also have a bit of a sort of non-traditional path to law school. I was working through college, so it took me more than the sort of normal 4 years. And so I have experience working with people who are coming from sort of somewhat different backgrounds with work experience. I've also done a number of applications and work with individuals who may be international as well, and therefore are sort of unfamiliar with it. So happy to work together, explain the process as well, and make sure it goes as well as can be expected.
Awesome. So the law school admissions timeline, this is crucial information because people sometimes have confusing timelines as to whether they're wanting to apply early decision or early action. Every school has their own deadline. Some of them are rolling, so it's important to keep track of all of these dates, because as you progress through the application process, there are a lot of different factors that will come to play in terms of processing speeds. For example, with LSAC, they not only do you have to, it's not just a, upload everything and you're good to go. Sometimes they'll have to, actually all the time they have to process your transcript. And sometimes that can take longer than you might expect, because maybe your school has a specific type of program that they are, not familiar with. And so it's always good to, for certain application items that are, that require more time for them to process, it's important to get those in as soon as possible, such that you don't run into any hiccups later on down the line, especially when it comes closer to the admissions process and the application deadlines. As you can see here, the timeline begins rather early with March to April. That's kind of when you would want to ideate or decide, if you're applying for the next cycle, that is, when or what type of schools you might be interested in. By May, you definitely should be thinking about studying for the LSAC, LSAT, especially if you are, trying to apply probably in early autumn, let's say September, October, which is ideal. June through August, those are like the prime times to take the LSAT. Although I do know a lot of students, and myself included, actually, I took the LSAT I took it in August, but then I took it again in December, actually, which was really late, so I wouldn't suggest doing that. But just speaking from personal experience, I know that sometimes people want to wait a little bit longer to take the LSAT because they want to get a higher score. So we can discuss that on a one-on-one basis should you choose to sign up with us, which I encourage you to do, because this process can be very difficult to navigate, especially because sometimes people give you like a more general template or scaffold, so to speak, for how you want to approach it, but everyone has their own way of learning. Everyone has their own speed with which they want to progress through this timeline. So it's not a one-size-fits-all by any means, but this timeline is good in that it kind of provides a more general feel of where you want to be at within each month. And as you can see here, by the time you are reaching September, which is now, you definitely want to be hitting the ground running with your LSAC application. You know, developing the first draft of your personal statement by October, November. That's definitely when you want to start finalizing and getting, especially your early decision applications in, because November is usually the deadlines for many schools for early decision, which we can discuss further one-on-one, especially like the pros and cons of that. And you know, January through April, that's kind of what the waiting game is, when you are kind of getting the results that oftentimes will come in a more scattered basis. It's not like one day that you get all your admissions in at one time. It usually comes in waves, and so we can, you know, figure out how to navigate that process as well as we progress through this time.
Yeah, and I would just add one thing to what Justin said, which is, you know, this is an ideal sort of, or a template timeline for those who are taking the sort of full look. But if you're looking to apply this cycle, you know, if that's why you're with us now, you're certainly not too late. You know, as Andrea or as I guess Justin mentioned, many of them are also you know, rolling applications, so they will start accepting applicants, but you know, the deadlines for most places aren't until the beginning of February, which is very late. But you know, but before then, if you're even starting now and you're considering it, that's okay. You know, we can work with that sort of, you know, shortened timeline, but you know, certainly good to jump on it, and you know, we'd be happy to work with you. Okay, so what goes into the perfect law school application? There are a number of different elements, and we're going to get into some of the details for that. But generally, right, what you're looking for and what you want to present to law schools is that you are someone who will be able to contribute, you know, to the law school community and who will be able to succeed. They want to accept people who are going to be successful both as law students and as lawyers. And so part of that is that it demonstrates your academic abilities, the things that you can do, you know, from a purely sort of academic standpoint, but also the potential that you will have as a legal professional. And that is where much of the sort of holistic pieces of the application come in, because they're evaluating to see, you know, does this person have life experiences that have made them a well-rounded individual? Do they know how to handle adversity? You know, can they handle the rigor that comes with being an attorney? No matter what kind of attorney, you know, you become, no matter where you go to law school, there's going to be you know, rigor and challenge within your career. And so they're evaluating that as well to make sure that that's you know, that you're sort of a candidate who they will feel comfortable with and comfortable, you know, accepting and sort of ushering through that process to become a lawyer.
Yes. All right. So the key elements to a complete JD application. A successful application will include more than just grades and test scores. It'll include a strong personal statement, which is sort of like your stamp of who you are. That's like your identity, like almost like your visa, so to speak, because it kind of speaks to not just, oh, these are the things that I've done, but this is who I am. That's the key of a good personal statement. And it's also going to have, and we'll discuss that in depth in a bit, but the LSAC application will also be submitted, as I mentioned before. This is something that you do through the website, and this takes some time. So make sure you go through the pages very carefully online and make sure that you fill out everything accurately and submit your transcripts as soon as you have them, because LSAC will calculate and weigh the GPAs a little bit differently than what your school might be to make everything on the same playing field. So just be cognizant of the fact that it may take some time for LSAC to process everything. So getting those sort of like, you know, those small low-hanging fruit in early is always the best way to go. Strong letters of recommendation. These are critical. And I think they will depend on, what stage you're at in your life and in your academic or professional career. So like, if you are, I would suggest 3 at least. If you're still in school, 2 of them should be from academic backgrounds, meaning your professors, people who have been in sort of the academic realm, and then maybe 1 can be from, for example, professional experience, maybe your supervisor at an internship, so to speak, or like a supervisor at, for example, for me, I got a recommendation letter from my writing center director who I was working under while I was a student, and also working part-time as a writing center consultant. And so that's an example of like a professional letter of recommendation. That said, if you are, farther removed from college, then you might have a different split in terms of your professional versus academic recommendation letters. Maybe you want to lean more into your supervisors and your work colleagues and people who oversaw your work in the professional realm, because you're so much more removed from school and you may not have those connections from college anymore because you're several years out. And we can discuss that more on a one-on-one basis, but those are the people that you want to kind of look to for letters of recommendation. And each component should kind of tie together to just kind of come together as a cohesive overarching theme. The theme of your personal statement should ideally also reflect the experiences and your lived experiences in your professional and academic pursuits that you list in your resume. It should also be reflective to an extent in your letters of recommendation, although you won't have as much control over that because you're not writing the letters of recommendation. Although you can kind of control that a bit in terms of selecting certain individuals that kind of reflect your passion or reflect your overarching theme that is evidenced in your personal statement. And those are things that we can kind of parse through on an individual basis because everyone has their own narrative that they want to construct. And there's a way to go about it that is very, very particular. And I think the most convincing ones are going to be the ones that really dig deep and kind of weave everything together in a way that paints you in the best light possible, while also making logical sense, which I know is common sense, but it sometimes can be very difficult for certain people to grapple onto. And we can discuss that further as well as we go through this process.
So, turning to some of the individual components and what you want to be looking out for and doing as you start to construct them. So, first, for crafting compelling personal statement. Now, as Jesse just mentioned, you want this to fit into a sort of overall theme and overall structure of the sort of narrative that you're presenting. And one of the most important things about the personal statement is that it is a personal statement. It's a statement of who you are as an individual, sort of what things are important to you, what your story is. The way that I often describe it is that it's sort of a form of short form memoiring. If anyone reads a lot of memoirs, by different people, every politician nowadays has one. A lot of celebrities have them. That's sort of what you're doing. You're not writing out your biography, sort of a factual, recounting of everything that's happened. You're instead capturing a theme that has sort of connected the different experiences within your life to present that sort of narrative. Now, within that framework, there's still certain important things to keep in mind. And so one of them is that you want to highlight your strengths. What is the sort of narrative that you're looking for? What is that sort of theme? You want something that's going to show, right, the unique skills and qualities that set you apart from other applicants. What is it that makes you you, and what is it that makes you a uniquely interesting and sort of powerful candidate for this particular law school. And then the other one is sharing meaningful experiences. Again, it's a personal statement, and you're not required certainly to share every experience from your life or every detail of every experience, but you certainly want it to be something that is meaningful, that is salient to your life and your development, something that sticks out. And that's obviously going to make for a better personal statement as well, because you're writing about something you're writing about something that has affected you in your life and that has helped you develop. And therefore, that sort of passion and that feeling is going to come out. And so you want to draw from personal, professional experiences that demonstrate your commitment, right, to the law and how they shaped your career aspirations. In other words, and just to sort of put the point on it, you want to sort of look both, backwards at these experiences and where you've come, and then also include an element of how they're going to move you forwards, how that experience or experiences that you're writing about are going to shape you and help to move you forward as well. One other thing to add about personal statements is just the way that they sort of changed over the last I don't know, I would say even a half decade or so. That there was once upon a time a world where you basically could write one personal statement and then you could just send it out to every law school, because every law school was essentially asking the same thing. And now the law schools have started to ask things that are somewhat different. And we'll talk about additional essays or data as well. But even within the personal statement, sometimes they'll ask for slightly different things as well. So, for example, this year, Harvard is actually asking for two statements. A statement of purpose and a statement of perspective. So one that's in essence more forward-looking, one that's more backward-looking. Some of the schools still just say write a personal statement, where some of them have this additional element of write explicitly how you will contribute to our law school community. So that's something to keep in mind as well as you craft your personal statement, is how to make it compelling based on the prompt that in specific law school is looking for. And again, that's something that we could help with.
All right, so tailoring your personal statement. Make sure that you do your due diligence and you look at the school's website, you discuss with your career advisor, with your point of contact at the school, with the admissions reps, with the alumni that you network with. There's a lot of information out there that is just within your grasp, and it's just a matter of you going and reading the information. No one else can do it for you. You have to do it. What we can do is guide you and help you craft that essay that matches that school's value and the school's overarching, beliefs and systems. But at the end of the day, each school is different, and you not only want to convince the school, but you also want to know in your heart that this is the school for you. So you want to make sure that you choose a school if you're, especially if you're doing early decision, but in general, look at schools that you actually think you can see yourself being at for 3 years at, because, we're not online anymore, we're in person. And so you're physically going to have to be at this campus for 3 years. So make sure that the school's values reflect your own and that you can really be a contributing member, not just faking it in an essay. Because anyone can do that, and if you do that, it'll come across very clearly to the admissions representative. So don't do that, but just make sure that you do your due diligence and read the school's website and read what they have to offer, such that when you do write the essay, it comes across a genuine and it's reflective of all the things that you wanted to touch on. Second point is be specific and authentic. Provide concrete examples about your passion for an area of law or area of interest. And make sure that you're, unless you have like a PhD in political science or you have like a master's in like philosophy or something like that, that kind of could suggest that you have a more in-depth understanding of the law. Like, I wouldn't suggest going into super, in-depth detail in certain concepts of law if you have no experience in that. Maybe if you helped, enact legislation, or you actually, worked for, a political office or something like that, maybe that would make more sense. But a lot of times I see people who kind of want to sound really smart and talk about the law in depth, but they don't really have that experience or understanding of it to really like hit that home. And to be quite honest, the admissions people, a lot of them are going to be probably all of them have JDs or they've been to law school before, and so they know they can kind of see if someone's kind of just like making something up or trying to sound more intelligent than they actually are. Not to say that you're not intelligent, but I'm just saying that you may not have the knowledge that you think you might have in this particular area. And so I would suggest being genuine means genuinely looking at what you do know and not faking, not going outside the scope of that, not kind of trying to exceed the extent of the knowledge that you have based on your own lived experience. And so that's how you keep it genuine and honest, is by doing that and also aligning with all the things that you have done on your resume, aligning everything to come together in a smooth, cohesive theme. That is sort of the end goal. And sometimes people want to like dabble and kind of discuss things that are outside the scope of anything that they mention on the resume. And then it's kind of like, where did this information even come from? So those are the things that you want to keep in mind when you're tailoring your personal statement. Be specific, be authentic, and make sure that your values are in line with the school. Otherwise, why would you apply to the school?
Okay, so there we go. So that's the personal statement. And now we come to the piece of the application that actually I think surprisingly for me in my experience is more often than I would have thought the part that gives people the most anxiety, let's say probably after the LSAT, which is securing strong letters of recommendation. Now, what's interesting about letters of recommendation is that it's the one piece of the application that you as the applicant really don't have full control over. And obviously there with all the pieces, there are certain limits. You have the LSAT score that you have, but generally, you can study, you can try to do it. It sort of feels like it's something that you've done with your control. Letters of recommendation are finding those individuals who can speak to your qualities and speak to your potential as a candidate, as a law student, and write those things. But that means that really it's in their hands. It's something that is not within your control. And I think that's really what engenders a lot of the anxiety. Now, that said, there are certainly things that can be done. And one of the values of it is, it's not completely in your hands. It is somewhat in your hands still with the decisions that are made. And also, there's not a ton of prep work that you have to do beyond the work that you have already done in your undergraduate schooling or graduate schooling, other than law school, or in your professional career. So when it comes to securing strong letters, what you want to do generally is choose recommenders who know you well and can speak both to your academic abilities and your character. And the key here is that you want to find recommenders who can speak well of you. You want to find recommenders who will hopefully fit into the general picture and narrative that you're crafting of your application. But also you want to find recommenders who can speak with detail and sort of precision about things that you've done and can give concrete examples. What you don't want is to find the highest ranking or highest profile individual you possibly have a connection with and get them to write a letter that says, I know so-and-so and they're a nice person, and therefore I think that they should you should accept them. I actually had this experience a few years back with so I grew up in Washington DC, and so I actually happened to know this person from before. This was some before I was working at a jurist, but he was applying to law schools, and his parents happened to know a senator, a United States senator, who wrote a very nice letter, but it was a very generic letter, right? It was, I know this guy, he seems really nice. I met him and he asked a couple of good questions. And ultimately, through advice, we decided that he wasn't going to submit that letter because it didn't speak actually to his character and his ability. And it also indicated that the senator didn't really know who this guy was, from the molding on the wall. And so it's better to find someone who maybe is a little lower profile, but someone who's a sort of a superior, a professor, or a teaching assistant, but someone who can speak with concreteness to your character, to your abilities, and to the things that you've done. The other pieces that are very important this letters of recommendation and making sure they can be as strong as possible is you want to give your recommenders plenty of time to write detailed and thoughtful letters, meaning you want to go to them early. If you're starting the process now, what I would recommend is the first thing to do is to figure out who the recommenders you want to be are and to go to them. Because again, since it's not in your control, you can't give yourself a tight deadline and turn it around. They're going to take as long as they will. And anyone who's ever worked with volunteers knows one of the hardest things to do is to get people who are doing things, for on a volunteer basis, to get them done within the specific deadline that you would like them to get them done with. So you want to give them plenty of time. The other thing is you want to provide them with background information on your achievements, your accomplishments, and your goals in law school. Don't assume that your recommender, even if it's someone you've worked with closely, even if you know them, will be familiar with those pieces. But if they've agreed to write you a recommendation, they want to be able to include those. So don't hesitate to send them your resume, to send them some brief outline of what your goals are for law school, what you want to accomplish, because that will help them write with more detail, and it will help them write a letter of recommendation that fits into your general narrative. And then again, the letters that they're writing, strong letters, should highlight your readiness for the rigors of law school and the challenges. So that's why generally you want to find as well, people who can write from, challenging situations, challenging classes, your professional accomplishments, but can speak really to your abilities, because that's what they're looking for in the letters of recommendation. They're looking for someone to say, I know this candidate, I've seen them firsthand act and work through some of the same challenging situations that they're probably going to face in law school, and they succeeded with flying colors, and therefore I think you should accept them as well.
Awesome. I think we're having some really great conversations so far. I'm going to quickly take a moment to check in with everyone to see if there's any sort of questions, comments, concerns, anything you'd like our panelists to elaborate on. And of course, we do have that Q&A towards the end as well. So we encourage you to get those questions in the chat. I don't see any questions thus far, but again, please don't hesitate. Joshua and Jesse are here to help and get those questions answered. But for now, I will pass it back to our panelists. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, somebody asked, what's a non-traditional, well, you know what? I may have. What's a non, what about non-traditional students? I apologize. Is that in regards to letters of recommendation?
No, that works. Yeah, is that in regards to letters of recommendation for non-traditional students?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can offer some suggestions. So generally, even as a non-traditional student, you will have some professor, you will have an undergraduate degree in some capacity. And therefore you will hopefully have, at least one professor, instructor who can speak to the, who can speak to your accomplishments. And then, if you have just one, that at times, depending on the law school, will be good enough, especially if you have a non-traditional background. It sort of depends on what kind of non-traditional background you have. And again, we're happy to work, individually and help you figure out what the best, what the best lineup is. But for me, like I mentioned, I sort of worked through undergrad and even with that, I had still been working for a number of years before I applied to law school. So I only used one academic recommender. I had one professor who I was still close with, and the other two were professional because I had, again, like 5 years between undergrad and law school. And so it made sense to have, two professional recommenders as well. So even if you're non-traditional, you'll be able to find individuals, hopefully, who can speak to your abilities and, and can tie in that way. But, understanding that it may be somewhat more difficult to find sort of academic, like the classic academic recommenders. But again, happy to figure out what works best for the specific situation. Of course.
Jesse, did you want to keep going?
Yeah, definitely. No, I thought that was a really great explanation. So, all right, moving on to selecting the right law schools. So making sure that you look at these specializations is extremely important. A lot of people come from, well, people come from different backgrounds, academic backgrounds, and so making sure that you are understanding of what your interests are and what you plan to do with your legal education is absolutely crucial. So certain schools will have specializations in terms of different clinics. Some schools have like, a small business clinic, they have an immigration clinic, a patent law clinic, IP clinic. Those are things that you want to kind of suss out and see if any of them appeal to you and any of them align with what you plan to do with your degree. Some people, for example, have a STEM background. They might have an engineering degree, and so that would really line them up for a career in patent law, for example. And people with technical backgrounds have a unique understanding of science and math, and so that is applicable to very specific areas of law. And so you want to make sure that the school that you end up applying to has opportunities that would allow for you to kind of continue to explore that. Not to say that certain schools that don't have those opportunities would be, the worst fit for you, but I would hazard to guess that you would want to go somewhere that would really let you hit the ground running, probably after your 1L year, to really get that experience and get those opportunities to really maximize and expedite your job search process and make sure that you land the job of your dreams and that aligns with your interests and goals. Some opportunities might also include dual degree programs. I, for example, personally did the JD MBA at USC, and some of the schools will, and this is something we can discuss further on an individual basis, but I just wanted to add that certain dual degree programs aren't, one application for both degrees. Sometimes you have, for example, I had to apply for the law school application first. I finished my first 2 years, and then I applied for the MBA program and added that on as a +1 program. Some schools offer different package programs where you can do both of them in 3 years. For me, it was 4. Some of them make you do 5. It really will depend on what your goals are and how important, first of all, important it is for you to get a second degree. I know that some people get a second degree in public policy because they want to go into government. Some people get a second degree in a Master of Accounting because they want to work for a Big 4 accounting firm in their legal department. So these are things that you want to think about to see how that can kind of maximize your chances. Some people will actually go to law school, get their JD, work for a little bit, and then get their LLM in tax. That's actually quite a common thing that I've seen. And there are certain schools that have really, the return on investment for their LLM programs are very desirable. So we can discuss that further if that's your goal, if you're interested in tax law. But those are sort of the things that you want to think about in terms of the specializations. Then you want to think about school culture and location, because it's not just about the school's name or how much brand recognition that the school has. It also depends on whether you can actually see yourself there for 3 years. It doesn't do you any good to go to a really high-ranking school and then kind of just burn out your first semester because you hate it there, or you just can't deal with the other factors like how cold it is or how expensive it is to live in a certain area of the city, and you didn't account for that, or the fact that you kind of are jaded because now you realize that you're in the school that has a regional name. Well, it's a good fit for you, but then perhaps it's in the wrong geographical region and it doesn't have the proximity to a really abundant legal market that you are seeking to enter. These are the things that you want to consider as well. And these things are often overlooked because people are looking specifically at the name of the school as opposed to all the other soft factors that kind of make the experience ideal for you. So just to sum up, look at the specializations, look at the clinics and opportunities that they offer, look at the culture, and look at the location and the other lifestyle factors that are important for you to be able to sustain life for 3 years at this law school.
Jesse, what's the is Gould the name of the law school at USC or the business school?
Gould. Marshall's the business school.
Marshall's the business school. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's So definitely echoing what Jesse said. And I'm someone who grew up on the East Coast. I'm happy with cold weather, but as happy as you may be, Cambridge, Massachusetts is far worse during the winter than Los Angeles. So
I'm actually in New York now, but I'm an East Coaster too. But no, Los Angeles is beautiful, especially in the cold.
Yeah, it's right, especially during the heat of final season, during the cold.
Yeah, and literally, you can't be too depressed if you're in the sun soaking it up while you're studying. It's not nearly as bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you got it right. So you do want to figure that out, and you want to figure out right where you want to be and what location, and especially also because a lot of schools will be designed to teach you the law of either of the state they're in or are geared towards the region, and therefore the resources also will help you find jobs there as well. I always feel like I have to mention this nowadays, just for people who are applying because of the names, that there are actually 2 Cary law schools now because the University of Pennsylvania changed their name. So when you're applying, it should be easy to figure it out. But when you're looking for law schools, if you see something that says Cary Law School is the best for whatever intellectual property, make sure they're talking about the University of Pennsylvania or the University of Maryland, which are both called Cary Law School. And I can't tell you why they decided that was a good idea, considering they're 80 miles apart. So, so as far as and yes, we do help with exploring specializations, as I very much in the chat. As far as so you found the law schools, you decide which ones you want to focus on, and then you want to tailor your applications for each law school. So how do you work on that tailoring? Right. Let's say you're applying to 5 places. Right. You want to sort of work and make sure that your application is going to give you the best chance and put you in the best light for each of those schools. And there are a couple of ways to do that. And the big thing is that customization is key, which relies on the research that you're going to do and relies on having an understanding of the schools and the school culture and what it is each one is looking for in a candidate. You generally want to avoid using the same application for every law school. So you want to personalize each one based on the school's strengths and values. As I mentioned before, in a way that's almost required now, because many of the personal statements are going to highlight different things and ask you to sort of emphasize different pieces. Now, that's not to say you can't use a similar personal statement or a personal statement focused on the same ideas. You don't have to rewrite, a 2-page personal statement for every single school, but you do want to, at the very least, tinker around the edges to make sure that you are highlighting and emphasizing different pieces. Another piece with that is that you want to make sure, I would always recommend, if they're optional essays, always write the optional essay. Now you want to make sure you're submitting a good optional essay, because a bad optional essay will not help your application, but a good optional essay will always help your application. And you generally want to expect that the top candidates are going to be taking the advantage, the opportunity to present more of themselves by writing those optional essays, and those often are even more specific. So, for example, the University of Texas, this application cycle has an optional essay. I believe it's optional on disagreements. On share a time when you had a disagreement with someone and how you reacted to it, and and what you learned from being able to have this sort of open and respectful disagreement. And those are the kinds of things that you want to write as well. And it gives you an opportunity to do the second bullet point here as well, which is to highlight why you're a great fit for that specific program and how it aligns with your career goals. Right, the more chance you have to write these things, especially for the sort of school-specific optional statements, the more chance you have to fit it in. Sort of to fit in more description of why it is you're going to be a good fit, and why it is this school aligns with who you are and what it is you're hoping to get out of law school and ultimately out of a legal career. And don't be afraid, certainly in a draft, don't be afraid to make it explicit, to say, I think that this school is really good at doing immigration law, and I come from a background where immigration was very important to me, and I worked at a shelter. I lived near the border, and I worked with people who had, who were come across and were displaced, and that's the kind of thing I want to do, and that's why our sort of values align. Don't be afraid to really sort of, you don't want to overdo it, which again are happy to work with you on, but don't be afraid to lean into that idea and the lining up of values.
All right, strategies to boost your application. Focus on a clear, cohesive narrative across all application components. That kind of goes into what we were discussing earlier about making sure that there's an overarching and clear theme that kind of aligns with your experiences, both lived, professional, and personal. Show evidence of leadership when you can, commitment and involvement with meaningful activities. So when people always ask, what are the best activities that you think would be, helpful for a law school application, I would say that there's really no limit to the types of activities. The limit becomes, the number and the amount of the activities that you're a part of. What people want to see admissions committees, especially with law schools, is that you're someone that you're not just a dabbler. You're not just someone that's sort of like, oh, I'm going to do this and that and then call it a day. No, you're going to be someone that actually digs deep and continues to devote time and attention and invest in a particular cause, whether that be volunteer work, whether that be student government, whether that be through, Greek life, whatever it may be. Show commitment, show leadership, show that you are doing things that for a long period of time that is longer than just one semester. Because if you can build upon that, it shows that you're someone that has the capability to succeed in the pursuit of long-term goals that are very far out. And it also shows that you're someone that isn't kind of just doing it for the sake of doing it. You're doing it because you genuinely believe in the activity, you believe in the group or the organization, and you are someone that has a desire to lead or has the charisma to be a leader. And while not every lawyer is a leader, so to speak, having those qualities will certainly help your application, because it shows that you will be someone that will hit the ground running when you're part of the law school student body, when you're there and you're going to engage and you're going to contribute to the classroom discussions and extracurriculars of the law school once you do arrive. They don't want someone who's just going to show up at the intro meeting and then dip out and never go again, just so they can put it on a resume. That's not gonna sell anything. And then also emphasize problem solving and critical thinking skills. You would not believe the number of people who, myself included, when I was first writing a resume for myself, I would always write, oh, I attended meetings or I wrote down notes. Like, no, you engaged in the meetings, you participated, you pitched ideas, you analyzed and you reviewed documents, you implemented protocols. You did things that actually were in furtherance of a broader goal in order to accomplish something that the organization or the business or the company, whatever you were working for, was trying to do. You were not just a taskmaster. And even if you were technically just a taskmaster, don't frame it as such, because at the end of the day, they're looking for people who have the ability to solve problems, the ability to advocate, the ability to represent a client in a court of law or in a transaction or in a business agreement. Having those skills, showcasing that you have a brain and you think clearly and lucidly and deeply about things is absolutely crucial. You're not just someone that takes calls or sends out mass emails. That's not all that you do. And we can work on discussing how we can kind of frame certain administrative roles, if that's what you've done, to help explain in a deeper sense what it is that you do. Because I assure you that you actually probably do a lot more than you give yourself credit for, and it's all about framing it in a way that is convincing and genuine and in depth as it relates to your problem solving and critical thinking skills. And then be proactive. Lastly, be proactive in addressing your weaknesses or gaps in your application with a thoughtful explanation. I personally did this because when I was in undergrad, I had a really high GPA for several semesters, and in one semester my junior year, logistically things were off. My class schedule was completely overhauled because I had transitioned to the business program, which is what you do at Emory. You do 2 years in the college, and then if you do the business program, you do 2 years in the business school. I was living off campus, everything was hectic, and I was working way too much, and my mental health wasn't where it needed to be at that time when I was a junior in college, and my GPA plummeted for one semester. And I needed to, make up for that in a way. So what I did was I hustled, I got my stuff together, and I got my GPA where it needed to be the following semester and every semester subsequent to that. And I asked my advisor, who was my professor at the time, being like, how can I address this? And what we did was we came in with up with a cohesive, very cogent explanation for what went wrong that semester and what I did to resolve that issue and why I've learned from it. And that was a 500-word addendum that I added that I think helped my application in the long run, because I didn't just allow it to sit there on a transcript and show that, oh, this person had a horrible semester, but then they got back up and they did better, I guess. Like, no, I had a little blurb and an addendum that spoke to what happened, spoke to the steps I took to improve myself, and spoke to what I learned from the entire situation. And that helped frame the narrative of why that weakness ended up being a strength. So those are the things that you need to do to kind of, predict or preempt any negative aspects of your application that are going to be glaring and obvious. Speaking about it in a way that is cogent and compelling and positive it will go a long way, as opposed to just letting it sit there, because having an explanation before one is asked of you is another way of actually how you become a good attorney, which I'm still trying to do. I'm not trying to say I'm excellent by any means. I just started. But I think one of the things that I've learned thus far is that one of the best ways to be convincing and compelling in your advocacy on behalf of a client, for example, is predicting the other side's arguments, predicting what they may say before they even come up with it. Same thing goes to here. Be proactive. Don't just let some negative press sit there on your table or on your application. Say something about it in a way that is positive and frames it and take control of it. So those are the strategies to boost your application.
So your key considerations for a competitive application, right? Firstly, your academic performance. And keep in mind, one of the things that is a major benefit to law school is, while there are pre-law, groups and pre-law programs, and some schools even offer a sort of rough pre-law major, there isn't technically a required pre-law curriculum. You can major in anything and still go to law school, and some things will have advantages for specific programs that you might want to do. Obviously, if you have a science background, it'll be, you'll be much more advantageous to do something like intellectual property. If you do, political science, you may have more of an advantage for public law, but it's not required. But what you do want to do is focus on whatever it is you're majoring in, having, a stellar academic performance. And so you want to ensure that your transcripts reflect strong academic achievements, particularly in relevant courses. So if there is something that you're interested in, or something related to your major, you want to try to push for those. Try to make sure that those are good. You want to get your academic record in order. Now, presumably, that's something that has happened, in the past largely. But if you're still in undergrad, or if you're doing a graduate program now, or if you're doing sort of post back work, it's always helpful to just focus on that and to make sure that your grades are aligned, because that is certainly a part of the holistic application that is viewed are your grades and your performance in previous schooling. Your LSAT scores, you want to aim for a competitive LSAT score that aligns with the median for your target schools. Now, the LSAT, right, obviously the easy advice there is the better score you get, the better off you are. If you can get a 178, then you're in very good shape. But often what happens is, because the LSAT tests a specific set of skills, and because it requires a lot of work, you may get to a point where you start to see almost diminishing returns if you're studying. If you start studying and you're doing 80 hours a week of studying, you may get some diminishing returns. And Therefore, if you have a school that you're really set on, you don't have to kill yourself to go, and get 7 points higher than you might need for that school. Make sure that you're sort of setting these realistic goals and realistic expectations for the LSAT that align with the school that you want to go to and that type of thing. And then extracurricular involvement. Jesse really mentioned that and discussed it in the last slide, but you want to demonstrate, your commitment to the legal field through meaningful extracurriculars, internships, or volunteer work. If you are majoring in something that is seemingly completely unrelated to the legal field, then you want to reflect to some degree your commitment to service to others, to to the type of work that is often associated with legal professionals and with aspiring legal professionals. And there's a wide range of ways to do that, but try to develop. And one of the easiest ways to sort of buff any application is to get involved in some sort of meaningful and relevant volunteer work. Justin.
Yes. All right. Sorry. So one way to strengthen your application material is making sure that you review every component multiple times. Make sure that you are editing and revising as you see every time you do an iteration of your application essay, especially a personal statement. Make sure that you are going through it with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that especially towards the end when you're submitting a final draft, you would not believe how many times you will be able to catch small errors that will not necessarily make or break, but you never really know, right? There are people out there who are reading your application, you don't know them, and some of them might spot a very, patent error on your application essay right away. And that's unfortunately also, not unfortunately, but it can be a frustrating part of being a lawyer, which is that you need to make sure that everything is in pristine condition before it is e-filed or goes to the courts, for example, because having something misspelled and having, or, for example, writing the wrong name, if you're representing a certain client and you misspell it or you talk about a different party in a different context by accident, those are things that can be really, really tricky. And so having or showing at least on a surface level on your application that you're someone that takes your work seriously and does not make blatant mistakes like that, and can go a long way. And unfortunately, even if you are an excellent candidate, if you make an error like that and you submit without revising, especially, for example, as Joshua was saying that if you apply to a certain school, a lot of schools have different application prompts. And so if you write the wrong school name and you submit it to that school, to a different school, like that's going to be really poorly reflective of you. And it's not reflective of your capability as a lawyer or as a student. And unfortunately, it's going to be a really big ding to your application. So make sure that you revise and you refine, and then get feedback. Don't get feedback from everyone. I don't do that because there's a lot of people who will give you feedback that is not necessarily incorrect, but it'll confuse you, or maybe not be the feedback that hits home to what is the core issue that would need to be resolved to make it the best version of your essay. I would say keep your circle of advisors or mentors smaller. Don't seek out like 20 or 30 people because more is not better when it comes to these types of revisions and iterations, when it comes to seeking feedback and help from other people, because this isn't necessarily like a math equation where it's like there's one right answer and like everything else is wrong because this one answer is necessarily correct. This is like an essay, so it's a more subjective kind of endeavor. And so if you have like 20 advisors on your panel, like looking through and marking things wrong, some of them might be conflicting opinions that you don't know how to reconcile. And so that can lead to a lot of confusion and frustration. And that's something that I personally went through, and also a lot of my clients have brought to my attention, and I really caution them to limit who they are speaking with, and also to prioritize people that actually have experience with law school applications, not just someone that you know. And these people ideally will also know who you are personally. You know, they'll be able to read your application as your personal statement and be like, okay, this is actually genuine because it's actually reflective of what you are and what you do, as opposed to someone who doesn't know you at all, and you might write something that's a complete lie about yourself, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is perfect, that fits you. They don't know it. You need to find someone that actually knows you as a person and knows what you stand for and knows your values and your principles and your goals and aspirations. And that person will be able to provide you with the best overarching feedback to help you shape your application to make the most genuine and compelling statement as possible.
So, common mistakes to avoid. Again, Jesse addressed some of these before, but we'll run through them. So, submitting generic personal statements that aren't tailored to each school, and that really that encompasses two different mistakes. One is, personal statements that either aren't tailored, so they don't say anything or speak to anything to the specific school, but also, of course, submitting a specific statement to the wrong school. But also submitting generic personal statements in the sense that they're not concrete, that they don't tell a story about you. A lot of first drafts of personal statements that I've seen, involve either someone trying to do some sort of abstract discussion of the law, or something that doesn't have any detail. There are no dates. There are no explanations of someone's internal state. It's I was growing up, and then I had some issue that I had to overcome, and and then my dog died, and then I was able to overcome it. But people don't even mention the name of the dog in a first draft, for example. If you're writing about your dog dying, you can include the name of the dog. So you want there to be concreteness. You want it to be specific to you, and you want it to be specific to the school. Missing application deadlines or failing to track required documents is very straightforward. Deadlines really matter as a lawyer, and they tend to really matter for law schools as well, partly for that reason. If you miss a deadline, sometimes you can claw your way back, or you can get some sort of dispensation, but it makes things significantly harder. You gotta sort of work on the timeline. Neglecting to address gaps or weaknesses in your application, as we discussed. If you have those, draw this thing out, mention them. It's better to do that and to offer an explanation than either to just ignore them and hope someone won't notice, or even worse, to lie about them and hope that no one will figure that out. Schools are much more forgiving of individuals who had challenges and struggles and made mistakes and own them and explain them than individuals who try to hide them and then get caught up. Overemphasizing academic achievements without highlighting personal growth is again a common mistake as well. These are individuals, certainly among application, officers who want to know that you're someone who, when they run into in the hall, they're going to want to connect with you. They're going to want to have a conversation with you. They're not just looking for scholastic automatons. And so you don't just want to highlight your academic achievements. In addition, those are going to be highlighted when they see your transcript and when they see, to some extent, your resume. So for the pieces that get them, that allow you to give yourself, present your personal profile, you don't want to keep playing those up. You want to try to play up who you are. Choosing weaker and personal recommenders, as discussed before, and then not proofreading applications thoroughly for errors or consistencies, as just mentioned. You send it through. Even as a lawyer, sometimes it happens. You send through a filing to a court and then immediately notice 3 typos. It may happen. Again, they can be forgiven. But if you review and if you're careful, it will come across much more professional. Which you don't want everything to read formally, but you do want it to look professional and be presented in that sort of way.
Yes, definitely. All right, so top 3 tips for a strong application: showcase your unique story. We discussed this. Make sure that you draft something that is actually reflective of your core principles and your own lived experiences. I would limit it to probably 1 core experience as opposed to several, because a lot of people want to just do a laundry list and explain everything they've done, but it's like, that's all in your resume. That's your resume. Don't reiterate everything on your resume in your personal statement. Your personal statement should be a deep dive into who you are. It's like a story. It should not be like an anthology. Second, tailor every detail. Customize each application to reflect the values and strengths of the law schools to which you're applying. That goes back to what we were saying before about doing your due diligence and research in the schools, making sure that your essays reflect the principles and the value systems of the schools that you're applying to. And, you know, tailor every detail. Make sure that the name of the school is accurate when you submit it. You know, sometimes you can submit a personal statement to multiple schools if they have the same prompt. But if a school has a different prompt and you submit an essay that's not responsive to that prompt, then that's a really big red flag. Don't do that. So make sure that you are keen on every detail and you customize when necessary so that you are maximizing your chances of getting accepted. And someone had asked, you know, how many schools should you apply to? You should not be applying to like 30 or 40 schools. You shouldn't be applying to just schools because you want to apply to a large number so you can see which one will accept you. You should make sure that you have like small batches of like reach, match, and safety schools, maybe 3 or 4 each, and we can discuss that more in depth to see what would be the ideal number for you as a candidate specifically, because it's an individualized thing. But keep in mind when you are applying to these schools, which ones have individualized, customized essay prompts that are not able to be sort of mass. You can't mass send out the personal statement that you drafted because it may not fit each and every prompt of those individual schools. So it really depends on what the school is asking for you to do, and you answer the question that they're asking. Don't answer a different question, and that happens. Stay organized. Keep track of deadlines. Again, LSAC, get your transcript in as soon as possible. Make sure that you give them enough time to process everything such that they're not, you know, at the last minute, they're like telling you, oh, it's not processed yet. And then your application can't be submitted because they need to process your transcript. You know, these are things that are avoidable problems if you just get ahead of the issue and you preempt anything that comes up. So avoid last minute issues, avoid last minute revisions to your essay. Don't rewrite your essay at the last minute. I've seen that so many times. Like an essay that you write over the course of several weeks with your tutor is going to be 10 times better than the essay that you kind of just rehash at the last second because you got cold feet. Don't do that. Don't wait till the last minute. Stay organized and trust the process and trust your tutor and trust that what you're doing and the time you invest in this process is investment work that is worth being made.
Yeah, so maximize your chance of success, and also I'll just acknowledge, I know we're running a little over. We're almost done with the presentation, and then we're happy to take questions. But just maximizing your chances of success. So right, build relationships with your recommenders. As you know, as we discussed before, but the more your recommender has experience with you, and the more they can write about you, the more the better the recommendation letter will be. So cultivate strong connections with the professors, with the professionals, your supervisors, your bosses, who can provide those detailed, personalized letters. And then, stay focused on your long-term goals, which will maximize your chance of success, not only because it will, allow you to sort of focus on it, keep your eye on the ball, but because it will crystallize for you what sort of law school you want to go to, what sort of program you're looking for, and that will help with choosing schools and crafting applications. Often the application process, can feel somewhat daunting and draining and very detail oriented. The good news is, it's a finite process. There is an end point to it, and as you saw, it's the kind of process that if you really give yourself a lot of time, is done between March and October, which is is 7 months. So, and it's not a 7-month full-time job process. It's a 7-month process where you're working a little bit at a time. So you want to keep your eye on the sort of long-term goal, and recognize that there's the end, and that this is the thing you want. This is the thing that you've been working for. You've decided to make the commitment to go to law school, so you can be excited about it. You can remind yourself why it is you want to do that, and sort of feel that excitement over time.
All right. So the final application checklist: ensure all components are submitted on time, including your transcript and recommendations. Double check that your personal statement reflects your passion and experience and that it matches the school that you're applying to. Confirm your LSAT scores have been sent to each school. That's through LSAC. Do that alongside submitting your transcripts and all the other application materials through LSAC. Again, LSAC handles all the application materials of every applicant. So that's another reason why you should get things in early, because there's a finite number of people that work for LSAC and they have a lot on their hands. So if you kind of beat the crowd by doing it earlier, that's always the best way to go. Again, it's different depending on if you want to take the LSAT later. So we can discuss it later on an individual basis. And review each application for any typos or inconsistencies before submitting. So those are all things that we've touched upon.
Yeah, and then last, when you're wrapping up your law school application, right, is just presenting your best self. That's really the idea behind the application and behind the sort of holistic process, and what it is that that we do when we're working with individuals, with one of you one-on-one, to try to craft your application, and what it is you want to be focused on. So with a well-prepared and thoughtful application, you can confidently take the next step toward your legal career, and you just want to make sure that you're staying true to yourself, true to your story, that you understand what your theme is, and what you're presenting, that those materials align with the values of each school, and through that you will present yourself as the ideal candidate, and ultimately it's about figuring out where you want to go and helping those schools to understand why it is that you belong in law school and ultimately belong in the legal profession, which I think Jesse would agree is a pretty cool job to have. It's if you decide you want to do the process, it's a pretty great place to be, and so we hope all of you have success on that journey, and we are here to assist with that. And so I think now we will take Q&A. I don't know if Andrea will step back in and moderate that.
I will definitely step right back in. So we are over time, so I want to make sure that we keep that in mind. So we've really been answering the questions as we go, which is awesome. But I do see one question that we haven't, so I think we can get to it and then wrap up. So she says, do you recommend an addendum similar to what you just described? I think you had mentioned that, Jesse, for reapplicants to explain why they're trying again. I've received split advice between addressing reapplying in an addendum versus in the new personal statement.
I honestly think I need more information about the specific circumstances, so I don't want to give you like a yes or no. I would say generally, when you reapply, it depends. Was it like a consecutive year? Like, just assuming that maybe it's several years later on and you've done a substantial amount of different things since then, that information will already be in your resume, and you'll also be able to reflect that in your personal statement, and your application ideally will be on file with the admissions office already, your old one that was rejected. However, again, it depends on your specific circumstances as to why you decided to take time to reapply, and why you didn't just go to a law school that you were admitted to, and why you wanted to go to this particular law school that you reapplied to. Whether there were personal circumstances, professional hardships, or things of that nature that kind of prevented you from pursuing your goals earlier. But I think that, again, the addendum is very specific to each person, and there's a way to paint it that makes it a positive thing. You always try to take the negative, acknowledge it as a negative thing that happened, like a hardship that you had to overcome that was difficult in the time, but always end on a positive note in tying together like how you improved from it, what you learned from it, and how you grew, and what this will let you do in the future. So such that if you were to encounter this hardship again in law school, you'll be able to face it head on, and you won't have to deal with that again, because it's made you that much of a grittier and hardy person. So those are the kind of the more general tips I would rely on as we, if you were to join juris and to draft the addendum. Again, your specific circumstance requires more information, but Joshua, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I was also going to say context dependent. It may be also if it's if it's specifically something that changed in the application. If it's just that you sort of took the LSAT again and got a higher score, you may not even necessarily need to address it. So it would depend specific. And then the one other thing I would add is you could probably assume if it's a law school that does interviews, which some of them do, that you will probably be asked about it. So one of the other things we do is we do work with individuals and have sort of mock interviews so that you can prepare for questions you're likely to encounter. So you're probably going to, even if you don't include it in the application materials, we'll probably have it on the interview, and we can work with you to make sure that you have a perfect answer for it.
And I think that's a perfect spot to end tonight's webinar. So I want to thank you, Joshua, and you, Jesse, for this wonderful conversation, and to our audience for being here. Please don't hesitate to book a free consultation if you do have any additional questions that we weren't able to answer tonight, or get back to us to the email that actually allowed you to hop into this conversation. So thank you all for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.
Thank you all.